Mitch McConnell hangs on to his Senate seat for dear life. He's also hanging on to his life for dear life. This is just another day. While the Senate is set to take their August recess soon, one governor has decided to ask questions about a member of the Senate who, let's say, took their recess a little earlier than their colleagues.
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is again ramping up pressure on Senator Mitch McConnell to prove that he's capable of serving. This week, the governor wrote a second letter to McConnell, urging him to talk directly to Kentuckians. The governor was asked about this at a Louisville news conference today.
And I'm not trying to pile on with all this stuff that's out there. All I'm trying to do is ask the bare minimum. And it raises the concern that he might not be able to meet the bare minimum.
How dare you? What about this photo makes you think that Mitch McConnell can't do the bare minimum? I mean, as long as the bare minimum doesn't include knowing that you're having your picture taken, or being able to tell someone what year it is, or having the ability to wipe your own ass. But other than that, I'd say this man is in tip-top shape, and so would he.
Yesterday, McConnell's office released a second photo of the senator next to his wife, Elaine Chao. In a statement, McConnell and the office of the attending physician said he remains in rehab, continuing intensive physical therapy, and they say they're trying to reduce the risk of future falls and that McConnell is not medically cleared to return to work yet.
See? This 84 years young man just isn't ready to head back to work yet. That's all. Once the doctors give him the all clear, he is perfectly capable of being propped up in a different chair, but in Washington. You know, the job that Kentuckians elected him to do. And don't think for a second that this brief hiatus from Senating isn't hurting him as much as it's hurting us.
Just moments ago, McConnell put out a new statement and a new photo that reads, quote, "I'm still working hard to get back to my full schedule of work in the Senate and in Kentucky, keeping up with intense physical therapy per my doctor's orders. Unfortunately, that means I won't be able to make it to Fancy Farm, Kentucky this Saturday."
Yes, forget whether or not this sitting senator has the mental and physical capacity to do the job he's being paid for. The real tragedy here is his inability to attend Kentucky's Fancy Farm picnic, just as he did last year.
And here you can see video of McConnell at Fancy Farm last year, giving a speech, walking around with his wife, Elaine Chao.
Well, this is my 30th Fancy Farm. I can't think of any place I'd rather be on the first Saturday in August than right here.
See? A year ago, McConnell was fit as a fiddle. He barely needed his wife to help him not topple over on his way to the podium. But while Mitch McConnell's health condition has continued to be a mystery for over 6 weeks to most of us, his party brethren wants us to know that Mitch is doing just fine.
Have you spoken to Senator Mitch McConnell since his hospital?
No, I haven't.
How's he doing?
I have no idea. I have no idea how he's doing.
Or not. It's pretty wild how Donald Trump will lie about January 6th, election fraud, the cost of his ballroom, getting a free plane from Qatar, and the Epstein files, but when it comes to Mitch McConnell's health status, that is a bridge too far. But, okay, fine. Donald Trump, who would get on the phone with a tree stump if he thought it would somehow benefit him, hasn't had the time to reach out to one of his Republican senators. But, good news for us, others have.
Yeah, he called me this morning before I did my radio show. We talked for about 17 minutes. You know, he talked a lot about the situation with Iran, talked a little bit about Ukraine and what's going on in Europe. I told him I'd been to the Teddy Roosevelt Library. We talked a little bit about the history of the vice presidency and how Roosevelt had transformed that in the modern presidency, a little history of the Senate. I mean, it was a wide-ranging conversation.
Wow, what a totally fascinating and completely genuine conversation. Let me guess, did Mitch McConnell also talk about how he can't wait to get back on his dirt bike, and how it just doesn't feel like summer when he's not on his wakeboard, and how he hates scaling back on work but really hates to not be scaling a mountain? But it begs the question, does Mitch's friend Scott Jennings believe McConnell is still fit to serve?
Did you come away feeling like he's still capable of serving the people of Kentucky as senator?
I came away feeling that he was staying on top of the news. Again, I look, his condition and why he's in the hospital or when he might come out, or look, that's.
Do you know why, and are just saying it's not at liberty to share?
I do not know why. I only know, frankly, what has been reported or what his office has said.
Do you know who has a 17-minute phone call with someone who's in the hospital and yet doesn't ask, oh, by the way, what happened? No one. Scott Jennings is either the world's shittiest liar or the world's most oblivious man. If he went to Lindsey Graham's funeral today, Jennings would be the one guy going, why is everybody wearing black and crying about this large wooden box? Mitch McConnell is not doing our country a favor by serving in the Senate. He is an elected official being paid with our tax dollars. So it feels pretty reasonable for Americans to get an update on his health status.
Would you encourage him or anyone in his position to be more transparent with his voters about his health than he's been so far?
Good question. I think that's a fair thing to say. But on the other hand, my impression of men of that age is that they're a little private when it comes to their health.
I'm sorry, but have you met an old man? Every elderly man that I've ever met in my entire life loves talking about their slew of ailments: gout, arthritis, hip replacements. In fact, they spend great detail talking about these things, often while everybody else is trying to eat. But this effort by Republicans and Mitch McConnell himself to portray to the public a spry man in peak physical condition who's merely days away from returning to office is about much more than an old man clinging to his youth. It is a cynical political scheme that all comes down to one date: August 3rd. If McConnell's seat is vacated before Monday, August 3rd, a special election will be scheduled so that voters can find a replacement to complete the remainder of his term. If a vacancy were to begin after August 3rd, though, there would be no longer the time for a special election this year, which would leave Kentucky and the Senate short one senator until January. Not that conservatives would ever say that out loud.
Staff, wife, Elaine Chao, whatever you got to do, keep the plug in until August 4th. Sorry to say it. Keep it in, because if it's pulled before August 4th and they declare Mitch brain dead and gone, Beshear gets to put someone in that seat.
Hey, come on, man. Save it for the eulogy. You know, if Eric Bolling is so comfortable with taking advantage of someone who's incapacitated and unable to function for his own benefit, then you might as well go full Cosby and at least start pushing the pudding pops. The whole reason McConnell keeps posting these proof of life photos is not to prove that he's alive and well, and he looks neither alive nor well, but to circumvent the democratic process. Kentucky Republicans rewrote the state's U.S. Senate vacancy law in 2024, stripping the governor, who is a Democrat, of the power to appoint a temporary senator and requiring a special election instead. Because there was just something about this man's slurred speech, shuffled walk, and his ever-descending jowls that made Kentucky's GOP think that they might just want to put a plan in place just in case Mitch doesn't make it through the rest of his term. The reality is, it is so incredibly fitting that Mitch McConnell's life is going to end in the same way that he lived, by undermining the rules for his own partisan benefit. Back in 2016, when then Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia suddenly passed away at the age of 79, presumably from a skateboarding accident, it was then Obama's job to put forth his replacement, as is customary for every president. So Obama nominated Merrick Garland, and Mitch McConnell famously did everything in his power to make sure that Garland never even had a shot.
One of my proudest moments is when I looked at Barack Obama in the eye and I said, "Mr. President, you will not fill this Supreme Court vacancy." You have to go back to 1880 to find the last time a Senate controlled by a different party from the president confirmed a Supreme Court justice to a vacancy created in the middle of a presidential election.
Mr. Leader, I don't think that's right. In 1956, Eisenhower nominated Brennan. The 84th Congress was a Democrat-controlled.
You're completely misconstruing what happened. What I gave you is the history of this. John, you're not listening to me. The history is exactly as I told you.
Gee, I'm just not sure who to believe. A journalist or the cranky old man who's either lying his face off or simply pissed that his prunes expired. Mitch McConnell spent decades in the Senate contorting his wrinkly body into an unfathomable amount of positions to justify his very simple and very cynical goal to maintain power and to stop Democrats from being able to govern, no matter the cost. Even if that cost was to the detriment of the American people and our democracy as a whole. But don't just take my word for it.
The history is exactly as I told you.
It sure is.